People may struggle with being friends with INFJs for a variety of unspoken reasons, despite INFJs' reputation for empathy, depth, and insight. INFJs are not interested in surface-level friendships or small talk. This can alienate people who either aren't ready to engage at that level or simply don't operate that way. Many people enjoy light, casual interactions, and when INFJs naturally steer conversations toward introspection, values, or emotional truths, it can feel intense or overwhelming to others. That depth, while enriching, can also come off as intrusive or too serious, especially in social environments that reward levity and spontaneity. INFJs also tend to be quite private and reserved. While they are highly attuned to the emotions of others and often act as confidants, they rarely share their own vulnerabilities. This imbalance, being the listener and not the speaker, can create one-sided dynamics where the other person feels exposed or unsure if the connection is mutual. Over time, friends may grow frustrated that they don't truly know the INFJ, even after years of interaction. It can feel like trying to get close to someone behind a veil. Their idealism can be both a strength and a wedge. INFJs often have high expectations, not just of themselves, but of the people they surround themselves with. They want their friends to be authentic, principled, and emotionally honest. This desire for integrity can translate into judgment or disappointment when others don't live up to these internal standards, whether spoken or not. People may sense this as subtle pressure or feel like they're being silently evaluated, which can be uncomfortable or exhausting. Check out our newly released INFJ Mastery course and INFJ ebook. The links are in the description of this video. Another challenge is the INFJ's tendency to retreat. When overwhelmed, emotionally taxed, or processing internal conflict, they often disappear without explanation. They may go radio silent, decline social invitations, or withdraw from conversations. To them, this is necessary recharging time, but to friends, it can feel like abandonment or rejection. The INFJ may return with warmth and affection, assuming nothing has changed, while the other person is left confused or hurt by the lack of communication. There's also the issue of emotional intensity. INFJs feel things deeply, and their moods can run strong beneath a calm exterior. This internal intensity can make interactions feel heavy or unpredictable, even if they rarely express their deeper emotions overtly. Friends may feel unsure of where they stand with the INFJ, especially if they're sensitive to emotional undercurrents but don't receive clear verbal affirmation. This emotional opacity can cause misunderstandings or foster a sense of walking on eggshells. INFJs often play the role of the helper or counselor in relationships. While this can be incredibly supportive and healing, it can also become unbalanced. People may come to rely on the INFJ for guidance and comfort without realizing that the INFJ may not feel comfortable asking for support in return. Over time, this can create emotional fatigue for both parties. The friend may feel like they're being psychoanalyzed, while the INFJ feels drained and unappreciated. Another factor is that INFJs are often seen as too much or too different. Their blend of sensitivity, idealism, vision, and quiet intensity doesn't always align with social norms. They may come off as mysterious, overly abstract, or emotionally complex in ways that confuse more pragmatic or emotionally straightforward individuals. Their insights can be profound, but also disarming. People don't always want to be seen so clearly or deeply, and INFJs have a way of intuitively piercing through facades. Even their kindness can be misunderstood. Because INFJs tend to be generous and warm, others may misinterpret that as romantic interest or feel pressure to reciprocate emotional investment they didn't ask for. When the INFJ pulls back, as they often do when overstimulated, it can lead to feelings of betrayal or whiplash in the relationship. INFJs live much of their life internally, navigating a complex maze of emotions, intuitions, and philosophical reflections. This inward focus can make them appear distant or enigmatic to others, even when they are deeply invested in the relationship. The contradiction of someone who clearly cares but still feels emotionally out of reach can be confusing and frustrating. Friends may interpret this as a lack of interest, when in truth the INFJ is simply processing things internally, needing time to understand their own feelings before expressing them. Because of their introverted nature, INFJs often prefer one-on-one interactions over group dynamics. In larger social settings, they may seem quiet, disengaged, or aloof, even if they're simply observing or feeling overstimulated. Friends who are more extroverted or who thrive in group energy may interpret this as antisocial behavior or disinterest. Over time, this difference in social rhythm can create a rift. The INFJ might decline invitations or drift away from group gatherings, and friends may stop inviting them altogether, mistaking introversion for rejection. INFJs also tend to overthink everything: conversations, intentions, tone, and subtext. This can cause unnecessary internal conflict, particularly if they perceive even a slight shift in someone's mood or behavior. They may withdraw or grow cold while trying to understand the situation internally, even if no actual problem exists. To their friends, this sudden emotional shift can feel arbitrary or unfair. INFJs often expect others to be as sensitive to subtle dynamics as they are, and when friends fail to notice or respond to emotional cues, they may quietly build resentment instead of directly addressing the issue. Their idealism can also make INFJs prone to disillusionment. They often enter friendships with a sense of hope and deep curiosity, investing heavily in the emotional potential of the relationship. But once they begin to see patterns of selfishness, dishonesty, or emotional avoidance, they may slowly disengage. This detachment is rarely dramatic. Instead, it happens through emotional withdrawal, quietly reducing contact or effort. To the friend, it may seem like the INFJ just lost interest for no reason. But from the INFJ's perspective, the friendship has already failed some invisible moral or emotional test. Unfortunately, they often struggle to communicate their disappointments directly, leaving a trail of unresolved tension behind them. Another reason people don't like being friends with INFJs is their desire to fix or help people emotionally. INFJs are natural counselors and often feel compelled to help others heal or grow, especially when they sense pain or confusion. But not everyone wants to be fixed or even seen that clearly. Some friends may feel exposed, patronized, or even manipulated by the INFJ's efforts to nudge them toward deeper self-awareness. INFJs often act with good intentions, but their guidance can feel unsolicited or invasive. If their advice is rejected or their emotional insight dismissed, INFJs may retreat, feeling unappreciated or misunderstood. Even their ability to deeply empathize, a celebrated trait of INFJs, can be emotionally taxing for others. Some people aren't ready to confront their own emotions, and being around someone who mirrors their feelings so clearly can feel suffocating. Others may unconsciously take advantage of the INFJ's empathy, leaning on them too heavily for emotional support without offering anything in return. This leads to a dynamic where the INFJ feels drained and used, while the other party may not even realize the damage has been done until the INFJ walks away. Friendships with INFJs often start with intrigue and depth, but can later dissolve into confusion or quiet distance. Not because the INFJ doesn't care, quite the opposite, but because the emotional and psychological complexity they bring into relationships isn't always welcomed, reciprocated, or even fully understood. Those who thrive in emotionally transparent, slow-building, and spiritually honest friendships may find INFJs to be among the most rewarding companions. But for those who prefer easy, emotionally unchallenging, or fast-paced dynamics, the INFJ can feel like a puzzle they never asked to solve. INFJs are often living a few layers beneath the surface of ordinary experience, perceiving emotional dynamics others don't even notice. They feel things that go unspoken, sense tensions no one else acknowledges, and are often caught between wanting to preserve harmony and needing to confront what feels off. This creates a paradox. They're deeply attuned to conflict, but conflict-averse. Instead of airing grievances or initiating confrontation, INFJs tend to internalize discomfort, hoping it resolves quietly. When it doesn't, they retreat, not because they don't care, but because they care too much and can't find a safe or productive way to engage. This emotional tightrope can be bewildering to their friends. One moment, the INFJ may seem warm, engaged, and thoughtful, checking in, offering insight, encouraging dreams. The next, they may withdraw emotionally, offer only surface responses, or disappear altogether. Most INFJs don't do this to be cold or dramatic. They simply need space to regroup. But because they often fail to communicate this clearly, it can come off as moody, distant, or inconsistent. People who value predictability and emotional availability may find this distressing, even destabilizing. Another challenge lies in the INFJ's internal duality. On the outside, they're often calm, agreeable, and empathetic. Inside, they are intense, highly idealistic, and sometimes deeply conflicted. Their calm demeanor masks the inner world they constantly navigate, a world full of strong values, difficult moral questions, and profound emotional truths. This contrast can be disorienting to people who feel like they only ever see one part of the INFJ's personality. Some friends may grow frustrated at never fully knowing the INFJ, feeling like there's always a hidden layer, a part of them held in reserve. For the INFJ, this reservedness is not deception, it's protection. They don't share their full selves unless they feel truly safe, and many relationships never earn that depth of trust. INFJs are also often future-focused. This means they often live with one foot in the present and one foot in an imagined future, analyzing what this moment means or where a relationship is going. Friends who are more present-focused or spontaneous may find this exhausting. The INFJ's questions and reflections can come across as pressure or overthinking. A simple friendship is never just simple to them. It's a system of meaning, emotional resonance, and potential. To someone just looking for a good time, this kind of depth can feel stifling, even if it's beautifully intended. There's also the issue of the INFJ's relational selectiveness. While they may be kind to everyone, they are rarely close to more than a few people. They invest deeply in the people they choose, which can make others feel like they're constantly being evaluated, consciously or not. Their standards for closeness are high, often unconsciously so, and they are slow to let people in. Even when they appear friendly and open, INFJs often hold a hidden skepticism, watching carefully to see if others are safe, sincere, or capable of emotional depth. For people who are more relaxed or casual in their friendships, this guardedness can come off as elitist or exhausting. They may feel like they're never quite measuring up, and the unspoken pressure can cause them to distance themselves over time. INFJs also have a tendency to overextend themselves emotionally until they burn out. Because they care so deeply, they may say yes too often, offer support when they're already drained, or absorb the emotions of those around them without adequate boundaries. When this builds up, they often crash, shutting down emotionally or disappearing without explanation. To a friend, this can feel like a sudden abandonment or betrayal. The INFJ may return weeks later, apologetic and ready to reconnect, but by then the damage may be done. And because INFJs often feel guilty for pulling away, they may avoid reaching out at all, further fracturing the bond. INFJs are also highly attuned to authenticity. They are often repelled by performative behavior, social climbing, or superficiality. If they sense a friend is being fake, manipulative, or playing games, they may withdraw quietly without ever explaining why. This can make INFJs seem unforgiving or overly sensitive, especially to those who don't value emotional sincerity as strongly. To the INFJ, it's about integrity. To others, it may feel like they're being judged for simply not meeting unspoken and possibly impossible emotional standards. Another reason why people may struggle to maintain friendships with INFJs stems from the way INFJs blend emotional depth with quiet detachment. It's a rare and often misunderstood combination. They feel deeply, but they don't always express those feelings outwardly in ways others expect. When an INFJ is hurt, they rarely lash out or argue. Instead, they internalize it, retreating into themselves to process it alone. This makes their pain invisible unless someone knows them intimately, and most people don't. The result is a situation where the INFJ feels wounded, neglected, or misunderstood, while the other person is completely unaware that anything is wrong. This pattern of unspoken pain, unmet needs, and disappearing acts can slowly erode a friendship without ever producing a moment of open conflict. INFJs are also fiercely independent thinkers. Even when they appear to be agreeable or cooperative on the outside, they rarely absorb others' opinions without deep internal analysis. They may nod politely during a conversation and then spend the rest of the evening dissecting what was said, comparing it against their internal compass. If they decide a friend's values or behavior is out of alignment with their own, especially when it comes to issues of integrity, compassion, or authenticity, they may distance themselves, often without explaining why. For people who expect transparency or verbal resolution of tension, this silent moral distancing can feel cold, even passive-aggressive. But to the INFJ, it is not hostility, it's self-preservation. There's also the issue of emotional mirroring, which INFJs do almost instinctively. They absorb the moods, emotions, and psychological states of those around them like emotional sponges. On one hand, this can create a sense of being deeply seen or understood, which can feel magical. On the other hand, it can make others uncomfortable, even subconsciously. When someone reflects your emotional reality back to you with such clarity and accuracy, especially when you haven't consciously shared it, it can feel intrusive, vulnerable, or unsettling. Some people may misinterpret this as manipulative or controlling, when in reality, the INFJ is simply feeling what's in the emotional atmosphere and trying to connect with it. This mirroring can also become exhausting for the INFJ. In a friendship where they are constantly picking up on emotional nuances, managing the energy in the room, or buffering others' emotional reactions, they may become drained without fully understanding why. And when INFJs burn out emotionally, they often pull away abruptly, needing solitude to recharge. This sudden withdrawal can be jarring to friends who are unaware of how much emotional weight the INFJ had been quietly carrying. Unlike more outward personalities who express frustration or fatigue in real time, INFJs tend to hold it all in until they can't anymore. Then they disappear, often without warning or explanation. Many people also struggle with the INFJ's idealistic nature, particularly when it enters the moral or philosophical realm. INFJs often have a deep and rigid sense of how things should be, in friendships, in society, and behavior. While they rarely push their beliefs on others directly, their expectations are often silently present. They may withdraw affection or warmth when a friend behaves in a way they feel is ethically wrong or emotionally dishonest, even if they never confront them about it. Friends may sense this judgment without understanding its source, and the INFJ's refusal to name or discuss it can create a confusing emotional distance. It's not that INFJs are self-righteous. They often wrestle deeply with their own flaws, but they have trouble maintaining close ties with people who violate their inner code, even unintentionally. INFJs also tend to romanticize relationships, including friendships. They may hold on to an idealized version of what the friendship could be, who the other person could become, or what kind of emotional bond they should share. But when reality inevitably falls short, when the other person turns out to be more self-absorbed, inconsistent, or emotionally shallow than the INFJ imagined, it creates a quiet heartbreak. INFJs rarely address this directly. Instead, they grieve the loss of the imagined connection in private, quietly lowering their emotional investment and distancing themselves without announcing their retreat. Friends may feel blindsided by this cooling of the relationship, not realizing that they've slowly been replaced by a more internal, idealized version that no longer exists. This internal idealism also ties into INFJ's natural tendency to project potential. They often see the best in people, not just who someone is, but who they could be. This is a gift when it inspires support and encouragement, but it can become a burden when friends feel pressured to live up to an unspoken standard they didn't agree to. INFJs may unintentionally place expectations on others that stem from their own vision of what the friendship could be, rather than accepting the relationship for what it is. When the other person doesn't evolve in the way the INFJ hoped or imagined, disappointment follows, not always voiced, but deeply felt. Over time, this quiet emotional disillusionment chips away at the connection, leaving the INFJ disheartened and the friend confused. The paradox of INFJ friendships is that they are both rare and delicate. The depth, loyalty, and soulful connection INFJs offer are unparalleled, but the weight of being in their emotional world can be too much for those who prefer lighter, more spontaneous, or less introspective relationships. The very things that make INFJs remarkable friends, their depth, empathy, intuition, and idealism, are also the qualities that make them difficult to remain close to unless someone can meet them in the same emotional landscape. And because so few people can, INFJs often walk through life surrounded by acquaintances, but deeply alone. Check out our newly released INFJ Mastery course and INFJ ebook. The links are in the description of this video.